Dungeon Clawler recently came out in 1.0, and it's basically what happens when someone combines a roguelike with an actual working claw machine. When you get a good build going in this game, magnets are sticking up half the machine in one grab. Your passive thorns damage is ticking for 300 at the end of every turn, and enemies just melt before you even attack. You can build around poison that spreads and stacks automatically, or metal items that all clump together for massive combo turns, or spike damage that multiplies itself and reflects back at enemies. The late game is about finding those broken synergies and then physically grabbing the exact items you need to make everything work. So here's how the gameplay loop works. You're going through a dungeon floor by floor, fighting turn-based battles against enemies. But when it's your turn to attack or defend, then you actually control a claw machine crane, drop it down, and try to grab items from inside the machine. Whatever you pick up gets used that turn. A dagger attacks an enemy, a shield gives you block, a sponge might do damage, and scale up if the machine is filled with water. The items drop into a bucket at the bottom and trigger their effects. As you can see, the physics actually matter here. Items can get stuck on each other, pile up in corners, or if you pick up something metal while there's a magnet in the machine, then everything magnetic can clump together. Sometimes you grab exactly what you need, which of course feels good. Other times the claw just barely misses, and you're stuck with nothing. It is genuinely like playing a real claw machine, which means it can be frustrating but also satisfying. The deck building part comes from choosing which items to add to a machine as you progress. You begin with very basic stuff, but after each fight or in shops, you can add new items to your deck, which is really just your pool of items that get loaded into the machine. You can add stuff like poison daggers that apply poison to enemies, or you find a spiky shield that gives you both defense and a thorns effect. Over time you're trying to build synergies. If you stack a bunch of items that work with poison, then you can and should build around that. The game has perks too, which are permanent upgrades you pick up during a run. These are where the really broken combos come from. For example, there's this perk that gives you block every time an enemy is poisoned. Another one can make you deal damage at the end of every turn, based on how many spike stacks you have. Combining the right perks with the right items can get ridiculous. There are builds where you're dealing hundreds of damage per turn, just from your passive effects. The game has multiple characters you can unlock, and they each have different starting items, and also special claws. Each of these characters pushes you toward different strategies. The game also has meta progression. This is where things get even more interesting. After you win a run with a character, you unlock these lucky paws, which are basically loadout slots, where you can equip claws or perks from other characters you have unlocked. So once you have won with a few characters, you can start mixing and matching their abilities. And yes, this makes a huge difference. The game is noticeably harder on your first run with a character, because you don't have these extra tools yet. You are progressing through 20 floors to reach the final boss. And of course there are the various different room types. After you beat floor 20, you can keep going in endless mode. This is where fully optimized builds get tested. The game's difficulty system is called death levels. Higher death levels add penalties, like enemies dealing more damage, having more health, or you starting fights with negative effects. It's the game's version of ascension modes from other roguelikes. Now of course the game's downside is that the claw machine can feel unfair sometimes. You will line up what looks like a perfect grab, and just whiff completely because of physics jank. Or items will stack in a way where you can't possibly reach what you need. The game is designed to be somewhat trollish in this way, but that doesn't make it less annoying. There is also quite a bit of a learning curve with figuring out which items and perks are actually good. Some items sound cool, but they don't really do much. Others seem weak, but can actually become insane with the right synergies. The game doesn't always make this obvious, so you definitely have to experiment. The game has been in early access for a while, and it just hit 1.0, so it has got a decent amount of content now. Multiple characters, lots of items and perks, different paths to victory, and also more secrets you can unlock. It is also on mobile now as far as I know. So Dungeon Clawler is one of those games with a gimmick that could have been just a gimmick, but they definitely successfully built a full roguelike around it. And this sentence concludes today's video. If your time was respected, a like or comment is very much appreciated.